So welcome and good evening. So I wanted to continue on a theme that I started last week. So last week I started to talk about this idea, I introduced these 5 qualities of endeavoring, of 5 things the qualities to bring together if you want to do something. Something that the Buddha talked about is a support for any thing we want to do. Of course, he's teaching about spiritual practice, but it's something that we could do for whatever. I'll just list these 5. I already gave a whole talk on them, but I just want to kind of add a little bit on this. So these 5 factors of endeavoring, we can say. First one is confidence. Second one is vitality. Third one is integrity. Fourth one is energy. And the 5th one is wisdom. So that's talking about how to gather up certain qualities so that we can do something or go in a particular direction, accomplish something. But now I'd like to maybe add on that, but also introduce something else, and that is, where are we going? What are we doing? Which direction, or what are we oriented towards? When I talked about it last week, was just, whatever you want to do, and this is true, you can apply those 5 qualities to whatever you want to do, but maybe it's worthwhile considering, what is it we want to do? What direction do we want our life to take? What direction do we want anything about us to take? And so there's this way that it can be enormously helpful to just even ask ourselves, because sometimes we don't ask ourselves, and it can be so powerful. What is our deepest aspiration? In my mind, an aspiration is a little bit different than a goal. A goal is maybe more immediate and tangible. I want to be able to lift X amount of pounds, walk a certain amount of distance, knit a certain way, or something like this. Whereas an aspiration is, in my mind at least, is a little bit more grand. It's a little bit more heartfelt. What is it? What is our deepest aspiration? Maybe as I'm talking now, you can just ask yourself, what are you most inspired by? What makes your heart sing? And the place, this direction you'd like to go. Because there's a way in which when we're aligning with an aspiration that we have, the way that we are being consistent with an aspiration that we have, there's a sense of openness or sense of ease, this may not be comfortable exactly at this moment, but I know that what I'm doing is going in the direction I want to go. Just recently I sat at a retreat, and after the retreat a number of us were talking, and I just found myself saying there's something so powerful about being on retreat, even if it's a horrible retreat and that you're in physical pain, emotional distress, right? And these things happen on retreat too, right? It's not all bliss and fun. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. But I said there's just something about, being aligned with what's the most important to you, to me, that just feels good, even if the retreat is hard. And I hadn't really kind of put that together in such a clear way that there's something beautiful that happens just being on retreat. So this is for me. One of my aspirations is to be cultivating my meditation practice. And I'll just say that. Doesn't mean that you all have to have the same aspiration either. But I'm just pointing to that there's this sense of openness or ease, or maybe even a little bit of relaxation when you have this sense of what I'm doing is aligned with my deepest values, what I really want from my life, from this life. And with this alignment and this ease, there's this way, and there can be some power to that. Power meaning it's like a movement, a force, or something like this. Many years ago, I had this quote in my kitchen, so next to where I would doing the dishes, that's so that I would see it regularly. And I put it there when I was in the midst of having to do something that was really hard, and I didn't want to do it. So that was like really hard, and it was something that took me many months to do, and I just didn't want to do it. And I could. And here's like a different translation. I couldn't find the exact translation of the one that I had up there next to my kitchen. You would think I would have it memorized, having seen it however many times. But it's by Goethe. He's a German poet, I guess we could say, and writer. And it says, in this quote, he says, "The moment one commits oneself, providence moves too." I don't really know what providence is, but just this idea that, okay, I'm going to go this direction, I'm going to do this. There's a way in which, not always, and it's not always obvious, but there's a way that things can help us along if it's really aligned with our deepest desires or aspiration. And then this quote continues. Goethe writes, "Whatever you dream you can do, begin it. This boldness has power, magic, and grace in it. Begin it now." One way that I think about this idea that this providence moves too is that sometimes we feel like, oh my gosh, I see all these things that have to happen in order to have what really is my aspiration, what really inspires me, my really goal. And I don't think I can do that. But here's what we're not considering. This beautiful thing called like impermanence. The version of ourselves that's going to get to that step is going to be the one that just completed the step before, which is going to be the one that just completed the step before. So we are changing as we're moving along this path towards something we want to do. So maybe when we're way back here, like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do that. But when we're right here, it's the next thing, like, oh, okay, I can do that. It's this way that we want to project the current version of ourselves into the future and say, well, this current version, it's going to be hard to do that. But the current version isn't going to be the one that's going to do it. It's going to be the one who finished or completed or found a way through other things. And I remind myself of this whenever I have something big that I have to do. Like, okay, well, future Diana can take care of that. I'm just going to do this one little step here, the next thing that needs to be done. And so maybe I'll just say the obvious, that often just because we're busy and we are surrounded by we kind of built this society that likes to distract us from anything that's uncomfortable, right? We carry these gizmos in our pockets that's designed to distract us. And just because of that, it's often that we don't touch into what is our aspiration. We're just busy taking care of, the next thing, maybe the next thing that feels urgent and important, but really maybe isn't aligned with what's the deepest wish or the deepest desires that we have. So it's worthwhile to really spend some time and think about it. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment here, but because there's a way in which we can, we can feel like, I know I get lost in this too, just taking care of like the to-do list, and that just feels like life is just one big long to-do list. We don't want that kind of a life. We can have a bigger life, a better life. But it does require us to pay attention to what's going on inside of us and how we're spending our life energy. So some aspirations might be something like there's this deep wish in our hearts for happiness, for well-being and ease. And maybe that wish for happiness and well-being and ease, it's not only for ourselves, but for others. And maybe there's this really wish for be able to make the world or our community or family members or others that we're in contact with to just have a little bit more ease, a little bit more happiness, a little bit more peace, well-being. Just imagine what the world would be like if everybody had just a little bit more peace, ease, and well-being. I feel inspired by this. So maybe that's one thing that inspires us, but maybe it's something more about service, more directly about service. It's such a beautiful thing to just be supporting others and to help them find what's important to them, or maybe they do know, and to help them reach it. And to have, to show up with compassion when people have difficulties, or to support others, rather than having it to be about, oh, it's all about me, but instead to feel like, well, let me help out. And there's a way in which helping and supporting others, feeds us, nourishes us too. I certainly had that experience when I was, and I didn't do this for a long time, but I was a chaplain up at San Francisco General. And there was something that it'd be quite something to just meet these patients, some of them really, really sick. Some of them, to be in the hospital was a step up in their living conditions. And just to be able to meet them where they were, it was a beautiful thing to be able to do. But it's not so easy. You don't need me to tell you this. We have these aspirations, these things we want to do. Yes, I'm going to do this. But to consistently orient our life, our activities, the way we spend our resources, our energy towards our aspirations, is not easy. If it were easy, you would already be doing it. So I appreciate very much that the Buddha, he talked some more about this idea. Like, what are some supports for this? Some ways to help us go towards our aspirations. And he talked about this quality of steadfastness, or I might say persistence, or this stick-to-itiveness, or maybe this tenacity or determination or resolve or resolution, something like this, as a quality that's needed because it's not always easy. It's not always easy. Of course, we like things to happen quickly. Things don't necessarily happen quickly. We like to take the path of least resistance, but maybe following our aspirations is not the path of least resistance. So it doesn't mean that we're failing, because it's hard doesn't mean that we're bad humans or we're failing or anything like that. It's hard because, it's just because. It's just the way that it is. We could talk about it and philosophize about it, but it's just not easy all the time. Sometimes it is. I talked about being like aligned. There's this openness when you're aligned. Sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it's difficult. That's how it is. And you don't need me to tell you this either. Everybody knows this. If anytime you've ever wanted to achieve anything or gain anything, there's been difficulties. So this word, this persistence or perseverance or tenacity, determination, the Pali word is adhitthana. And one person described it, and I kind of like this, as this gentle but persistent wind that's like blowing at your back. That's just kind of like helping you go a particular direction. This idea of like, okay, I'm going to go this direction. And for some people, I'll just say that actually this kind of like persistence or perseverance is not a difficulty for them. For them, that's the way that they are. They have a goal and they're just kind of like have a certain doggedness and are just make it happen. And if you're one of those people, then maybe where the difficulty is different than some other people with a stick-to-itiveness. Maybe the difficulty is not to like push this practice or push whatever it is you're doing to drudgery. I have to do this and just do it, and then your life gets filled like drudgery. Nobody wants that. Or if you're one of those people that stick-to-itiveness is easy and that's the way that you move through the world, maybe there's the edge for you is to be able to do that and not alienate others or dismiss others. Or there can be a way it's like, get out of my way, I have to do this. I don't care what you're doing right now, I have to do this. So, right, everybody, whether this idea of persistence or perseverance, determination comes easily or not, there's a way in which we can practice with it, that it can help us with our aspirations. And S.N. Goenka, some of you may know, is a teacher in the Insight tradition. And he says, and maybe you have all heard this, I know I've heard this before too, it's something kind of just, it's not unique to him. But this idea that, well, we could say for, in particular maybe with a spiritual practice, but any other thing that you want to do, you can dig 10 wells 1 foot deep, but you're not likely to find water. But maybe there's one well that's 10 feet deep that you can find water. So this recognition of just staying there. And it's this, that's kind of like this power of aditana. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna stay here, and I made this resolve. This is really what's important to me, and I'm gonna hang in there, even though right now it's uncomfortable, even though right now I don't want to do it. But to find a way to do it, but not a way that is where we're tied up into knots. Not without a way in which we're like beating ourselves up, like you're going to be a bad person if you don't do it, or you are a bad person because you don't want to do it, or something like this. But instead, this like peaceful perseverance. Like, okay, yes, this is what needs to be done. This is what I'm going to do. And we kind of like bow, like, yes, I recognize you don't want to do it. We're going to do it anyway. And I'm saying this for myself too, because sometimes I find myself, I have to do things. I find myself, putting them off or something like this. But recently I had to do something that was rather uncomfortable. And it's so silly, but it turned out it worked. Just like, I just said out loud, okay, I can do hard things, and I'm going to do this. And there was just this little tiny pep talk. And it wasn't a way like, Diana, you're going to be such a loser if you don't do it, right? That doesn't work. I've tried that. It doesn't work. Instead, like, okay, I can do hard things. I'm going to do this. And it was hard, and I did it. So it's a way in which we can stop maybe always insisting that we're comfortable all the time. I like to be comfortable. I think all of us do, but there's this way in which kind of like society really promotes like comfort at the exclusion of everything else, never to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel discomfort. It's just discomfort. It doesn't mean anything about the way the universe is made, whether it's a just world or not. It doesn't mean about whether we're good people or not. It's just discomfort. It arises, it passes away. And I wish for all of you that it doesn't stay around for a long time, but we don't get to control those things. Because there's this way in which if we do apply this perseverance or persistence, this aditana, it adds like this richness to our life, this level of fulfillment or satisfaction. Like, yeah, I really tried. Maybe I didn't get what I wanted. Maybe I did, but I really did try. And there's this way in which so often we can be holding back and feeling like, well, I don't even really want to try, because the fear of not achieving or attaining, acquiring, the fear of that, of not doing that, often prevents us from even starting. But if we're able to begin again and again and again and again, just begin again and again and again, there's this way that it brings a certain, I don't know, satisfaction to your life. When I had to do that difficult thing and I did it, there was a little bit of uplift, like, oh, look at that. I did it, I really didn't want to. I wasn't quite sure that I could, but I did it. So, and there's, we need to fill our lives with these types of things. There's so much stuff that's kind of like our energy's draining out. And this is something that kind of like gives us a little bit of confidence, a little bit of boost to do something that's difficult. It doesn't have to be wildly difficult. It can be just sending that email that you've been putting off, that you need to reply to a coworker or something like this, or whatever it might be. So how would we make a resolution? How would we set a resolve? I like this one ways to think about is what for yourself, what is something that I can maybe practice this adhitthana with, this determination, this resolve, persistence. And just to ask yourself, what qualities would I advise a friend who is very similar to me? What qualities would I advise them to develop or cultivate or pay attention to? Somebody that we loved and cared for. What would we do? As opposed, it's really helpful to think about things that way. It's a little bit more accessible. Otherwise, that inner critic is pretty sneaky, and otherwise it'll get right in there. Well, you should do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Instead, just okay, if I had a good friend who was like this, what maybe is something that this friend could work on? To ask it that way. But maybe this is a reflection. Maybe it's not something that comes immediately to mind, but maybe it's something that gets dropped in during a meditation or something when there's some openness or some ease. And when you feel like you have this idea, okay, I really want to orient towards this aspiration. In order to meet this aspiration, I want to cultivate this particular quality. And once you have that sense where you've filled in those words, whatever the aspiration is, whatever the quality to be developed next, or right then to help with that aspiration, to be a little bit more specific, I want to have more spaciousness in my life. Maybe that's the aspiration. And then maybe the quality to cultivate is taking care of clutter. Maybe that's just something okay, I'm just going to organize my space, the physical space, I'm going to start there. Or I'm going to practice saying no, because maybe my life is filled up with things because I can't say no to other people, or I'm just going to spend more time taking walks in nature instead of doom scrolling. I'm going to go outside. Whatever it might be. So after you've kind of have these ideas, then sit with it a little bit and see how does it feel? Is there a little bit of delay? Oh yeah. Or is there a little yeah, okay, I guess I should do this. I really don't want to. There should be a little bit of something that has a little bit of kind of excited, or this recognition that this would be a great thing for my life, and maybe the challenge feels challenging, but not too much, not like I can't do it or something like that. So feel into it and choose something that feels achievable, and yet you will have to stretch yourself a little bit. Not completely be a different person, just stretch yourself a little bit. And there's a way in which we can even like say things out loud. Maybe like sit for a little bit and, I resolve to take care of clutter. Maybe I'm going to say this because I am planning to clean my desk tomorrow. So I have my desk right now is a mess. I resolve to take care of clutter in my house. And then maybe it's something like, and may it be so. There's like a bow or a saying or, something. Or maybe you ring a bell or light a candle or do something like this to distinguish it from just one more thought. Like, okay, this thought is a little bit different. And then, or you can also, actually, it occurs to me, you can also say it to somebody else, or maybe you guys can do something together and sometimes be accountability partners. And I do this with a friend that we send photos to each other for just making sure we get outside every day into nature. And it's it's fantastic, to get these little pictures. Oh, okay, she's outside. Look, I should go outside. It's so nice. So how do we keep it? It's okay, easy enough to make it, but how do we do this adhitthana? How do we have this persistence, and how do we have this determination, this resoluteness? Well, one is when your resolve slips, and it will, guaranteed, right? If it didn't, then you chose something a little bit too easy, maybe. But when the resolve slips, just reflect on how that felt. Not beating yourself up, not analyzing it, just feeling maybe the disappointment. Because disappointment, like for me, feels like this little tightness in the gut and kind of like the shoulders, kind of like, this collapsing down. And allow yourself to feel that collapse if indeed it is a collapse. And the body and the mind don't like that collapse. And so there'll be a way in which, going this direction leads to this uncomfortable feeling, collapse, for example. Going this other direction gives me some confidence, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable, not what I want to do, but it gives me some confidence. So just recognize both the body and the mind. It can be really helpful to bring the body into it. Our posture, our physical posture, or that internal contraction that happens. And then just notice, maybe there's something obvious about, why it was hard at that time to follow your resolve. Like, I made the resolve to not eat as much sugar. Maybe I shouldn't have bought all those cookies. Okay, don't buy cookies anymore. Or, maybe there's something obvious, but maybe there's something that's not obvious to you. And there can just, without a lot of analysis, because analysis, often the inner critic gets disguised as analysis. Well, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you did this wrong. That is not where we're going. It's like, okay, just what's can happen next? How did I get here, and what's next? How can I write this, or is there a way that I can just begin again? That's all that's needed, is just begin again. In whatever way that's simple. I think, is it James Clear? He's this person who wrote this book, Atomic Habits, if I'm remembering correctly. He says, just do something that you can do in 2 minutes. I thought, okay, that's worthwhile. Okay, this is how you begin again. Just do something for 2 minutes. We can do that. All of us can do that. But there's this way in which we can also get in trouble with this resolves. I'm saying here's an aspiration and then have a resolve to do it. And I don't want to say that it's only upside, because there's a way in which we can kind of slip into something that it turns into something that's not helpful. For example, just beating ourselves up when we have difficulties. Let's not make this something else that we're going to beat ourselves up with. I'm going to just tell you right now, there's going to be difficulties, and it doesn't mean anything about you as a person. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just the way things are. It's not a personal failing. It's just the way things are. But there's a way also that if we have this resolve, or I'm going to do this in order to meet this aspiration, that we can get really fixed views. This is good, and anything else that deters me from it is bad. And there's a way that we can have this dogmatism or fundamentalism, or just this really fixed view. Like, I don't care about anything else. You guys are inferior or something because you don't have the same idea that I have, or this terrible way, right, to kind of like move through the world. But sometimes we feel like in order to support this determination and this resolve, that we have to like really bear down and strain and strive. And I'm even making a fist when I'm doing this because it kind of feels like that. But then this fistedness, like having this fist, shows up in our minds too, kind of like being closed. Like, no, only this. Don't tell me about other ideas. That's silly. I don't want to hear it, or something. There can be a certain harshness. So that could be like one of the downsides of this resolve. Or also can just be this stubbornness or this immovability or obstinacy that kind of like bleeds out into other things too. Like, okay, I'm going to try to control everything because I'm trying to control this one thing, but that's not going so well, or I don't know. It turns out, right, we can't really control nearly what we think we can, right? But when we try to do something, this idea of wanting to control, it just bleeds out into other areas of our lives, trying to control other people. And once had a friend that was trying to lose weight, and this friend discovered that they were feeding the cats less and less because they're like, well, we all should be losing weight, right? But the cats didn't need to lose any weight at all. But there's this way, right, that it kind of just bleeds out into other things. So the Buddha also kind of like gave some ways to work with us, the way that having a resolve can slip into some contraction or tightness, or bleeding into stubbornness or obstinacy or something like this. So there's these 4 supports. I'll just mention these briefly. There's 4 supports for this resolve. Right, this is Buddhism, right? So we have all these lists. So I love these lists, but I know not everybody loves them. That's perfectly fine if you don't. So this 4 to support adhitthana, resolve, determination, persistence, is some wisdom. Like some wisdom about okay, how to stretch your capabilities in a way that honors who you are as a person, honors your life experience, as well as stretches your capabilities. Not something too big and not something too small. There's a little bit of wisdom required in this. It also takes wisdom to not beat yourself up, to not allow this inner critic to get in there. It takes some wisdom to say, oh, I see you, inner critic. Okay, you can be there. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take care of myself, but I'm just going to let you be on the side. So we're going to honor and respect that their inner critic, it's a habit that likes to come along, but we don't need to give it authority. We don't have to believe it. We can just say, okay, I see you, Mildred, come along. Whatever name we want to give to this person. This is not uncommon for people to name their inner critics, kind of names that give them, give a little levity to it, right? Wisdom, truth. This is the second support for adhitthana, this persistence. There's a number of different ways we can interpret this. One is maybe just being true to your resolve. Staying with it. I'll stick with that. I could talk more about that, but one way we can interpret truth here is just to be true to the resolve. The third one is relinquishment. we're going to have to let go of some things. Guaranteed. We're going to have to let go of something. Views or activities or habits, patterns. I don't know what that is. And this willingness to let go of what needs to be let go of. We all know this. And there's this quote in the Dhammapada. If you see a greater happiness that comes by forsaking a lesser happiness, be willing to forsake the lesser happiness for the greater happiness. To Nisaro Bhikkhu, he says, exchanging candy for gold. Like, okay, this candy is sweet, but gold is more valuable, can help us in ways, will make a difference, unlike candy. So the third quality that can help us with this setting of resolve is relinquishment, just recognizing we will have to let go of things. Because often the things that pull us off of the path are those things that look good and promise a quick gratification and those are, well, if those worked, you wouldn't be making a resolve for something different. So just recognizing we're going to have to let go of some of these things. And then here's the fourth quality, is this sense of peace. Like doing this resolve with as much peace as you can. In a way that we're not getting all worked up with the difficulties, that we're not, as I'm saying again and again and again, that we're not creating the stories that it means that we're bad people or inadequate in some way, or that we can't do it, or any of that kind of stuff. But can we do it with peace? Like, yeah, it's hard, but I can do hard things. And maybe I can't do that big hard thing. Maybe I can do this little hard thing. Find something that you can do that takes 2 minutes or something. But to do it with some peace, with as much ease and openness as you can find, so that we don't kind of like slip into the downsides of this resolve, this stubbornness or obstinacy. So this idea of making an aspiration, what's like really meaningful for us. And then setting a resolve or a determination. What is something, a quality, something that we can do, develop, cultivate to help support our life going towards this aspiration? And then the Buddha talked about these 4 qualities to help this resolve. Wisdom, truth, relinquishment, and peace. And I'll end there, and then I'll open it up for some questions. Thank you. Anybody have some questions or comments?
Thank you, Diana. Last week, I attended a 1-hour seminar on decluttering.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was for all of NASA, and there were like over 400 people on this. Just, so decluttering was quite a, timely for many, many people.
It's a thing.
And they actually had 6 categories of why you hang on to things.
Oh, okay.
So I won't go through the whole 6.
You don't want to sit up here and just give a whole nother talk?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 1-hour talk that I listened to, but, there were things about, I guess the ones that stuck in my mind, number one was things that had no home, had no place to go. Some things that were just junk, they just needed to be thrown out. Some things that you had overbought, like you'd gone to Costco and bought, like 5 pounds of nutmeg.
5 pounds of nutmeg. That's a lot of nutmeg.
Yeah. One of them was sentimental attachment. And I don't remember the other 2, but that sort of helped me at least think about, okay, well, why, rather than just beating myself up like, get rid of this, more like, well, what's the attachment here? Because, clinging is something that we talk about, but this was like, you could sort of look at what might be behind that not wanting to let go.
And maybe if I may, we could even go as further to say, let's go ahead and put them in piles. This thing doesn't have a home. This thing has sentimental value. This thing has is a to-do list, and then just, or this thing needs to be recycled or something like that.
Yeah.
Shuffle the clutter.
Yeah. And one of the other categories was the someday I'll.
Oh yeah.
The projects like someday I'll.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
We all have those too.
Yeah.
I'll get around to that someday. Yeah. Just in case. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or a question?
Hi. As I was listening to you, I was thinking that what is it that stops us from doing what we want to do or where we want to go? It's very clear in our mind that we want this. We want this. This is my dream, or a small dream, big dream. And then I have a feeling that there are some training in the background, some memories of, in the subconscious that it says, why would you do that? Or you can't do that. And then I was going through this for a while, and then I started meditation. And then actually for me, decluttering my mind is more important than getting rid of stuff. So then I noticed that I have to focus on my conscious mind. I have to be aware of what's going on in my conscious mind, right in front of my brain, that what is it that I have to train this, because it comes from all the background, that my experiences, and then then I focus on my awareness.
Yeah.
And during the meditation, I'm practicing for a while. And in the beginning, it didn't happen. For 2 years, I didn't even know what's meditation. And I sat with no result. And as I knew something finally is going to happen. And so for me, when this meditation is helping me to be aware of what is it that I want, but why am I not doing it? Mm-hmm. And then the clarity comes in the meditation.
Yeah, this recognition of what's preventing you from,
exactly.
From what's getting in the way.
I'm getting to know myself.
Yeah.
I know myself more than before. That I'm very real when you sit and then you get rid of all the clutters. As I sit, my thinking, my train of thought is getting less, slower and slower, and then I get to the point that it's kind of empty, and then I feel like my creation comes from there. And this has been really great experience for me.
Nice.
I just wanted to share with you, and then you added some more knowledge that I can bring to my awareness to when I meditate. And it's just being aware. I like to be conscious of what's
Yeah.
going on in my mind. We
Yeah.
can't just let it go. We can't,
It
it's
can
my
be right-
baby.
it can be
My
very
mind is my
helpful.
baby to take care of
Yeah.
it. I'm not going to let everything comes there like before.
Yeah, it
We
can
all
make a
go-
big difference if we can
Exactly.
know what's happening in our minds. But
Exactly.
we don't always do,
No.
right? So we can't necessarily wait until we have like perfect clarity.
Exactly.
But thank you for bringing up like, okay, what is getting in the way that makes me think that maybe the next talk next week I'll talk about, okay, what are some of these things that get in the way of doing the thing that's important to us?
Right.
Would you be surprised if I said, well, the Buddha has a list? Of course, right. But thank you. And what is your name?
Nicole,
Nicole. Thank you, Nicole.
thank you.
So thank you all, and I wish you safe travels home and all the best. Thank you.